This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information and to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Maria Elmvang, Copenhagen, Denmark, October 2006. Dear Enemy by Jean Webster. Part 15. Thursday evening. Dear Judy, Sandy is back after a 10 days' absence, no explanations, and plunged deep into gloom. He resents our amiable efforts to cheer him up, and will have nothing to do with any of us except baby Allegra. He took her to his house for supper tonight, and never brought her back until 7:30, a scandalous hour for a young miss of 3. I don't know what to make of our doctor. He grows more incomprehensible every day. But Percy, now, is an open-minded, confiding young man. He has just been making a dinner call. He is very punctilious in all social matters. And our entire conversation was devoted to the girl in Detroit. He is lonely and likes to talk about her, and the wonderful things he says. I hope that Miss Detroit is worthy of all this fine affection, but I'm afraid. He fetched out a leather case from the innermost recesses of his waistcoat, and, reverently unwrapping 2 layers of tissue paper, showed me the photograph of a silly little thing, all eyes and earrings and fuzzy hair. I did my best to appear congratulatory, but my heart shut up out of pity for the poor boy's future. Isn't it funny how the nicest men often choose the worst wives, and the nicest women the worst husbands? Their very niceness, I suppose, makes them blind and unsuspicious. You know, the most interesting pursuit in the world is studying character. I believe I was meant to be a novelist. People fascinate me, until I know them thoroughly. Percy and the doctor form a most engaging contrast. You always know at any moment what that nice young man is thinking about. He is written like a primer in big type and 1-syllable words. But the doctor, he might as well be written in Chinese as far as legibility goes. You've heard of people with a dual nature. Well, Sandy possesses a triple one. Usually he is scientific and as hard as granite, but occasionally I suspect him of being quite a sentimental person underneath his official casing. For days at a time he will be patient and kind and helpful, and I begin to like him. Then, without any warning, an untamed wild man swells up from the innermost depths, and, oh dear, the creature's impossible. I always suspect that sometime in the past he has suffered a terrible hurt, and that he is still brooding over the memory of it. All the time he is talking you have the uncomfortable feeling that in the far back corners of his mind he is thinking something else. But this may be merely my romantic interpretation of an uncommonly bad temper. In any case, he is baffling. We have been waiting for a week for a fine windy afternoon, and this is it. My children are enjoying Kite Day, a leave taken from Japan. All of the big enough boys and most of the girls are spread over Knowltop, that high, rocky sheep pasture which joins us on the east, flying kites made by themselves. I had a dreadful time coaxing the crusty old gentleman who owns the estate into granting permission. He doesn't like orphans, he says, and if he once lets them get a start in his grounds, the place will be infested with them forever. You would think, to hear him talk, that orphans were a pernicious kind of beetle. But after half an hour's persuasive talking on my part, he grudgingly made us free of his sheep pasture for 2 hours, provided we didn't step foot into the cow pasture over the lane, and came home promptly when our time was up. To ensure the sanctity of his cow pasture, Mr. Knowltop has sent his gardener and chauffeur and 2 grooms to patrol its boundaries, while the flying is on. The children are still at it, and are having a wonderful adventure racing over that windy height, and getting tangled up in one another's strings. When they come panting back, they are to have a surprise in the shape of ginger cookies and lemonade. These pitiful little youngsters with their old faces. It's a difficult task to make them young, but I believe I'm accomplishing it. And it really is fun to feel you're doing something positive for the good of the world. If I don't fight hard against it, you'll be accomplishing your purpose of turning me into a useful person. The social excitements of Worcester almost seem tame before the engrossing interest of 113 live, warm, wriggling little orphans. Yours with love, Sallie. P.S. I believe, to be accurate, that it's 107 children I possess this afternoon. Dear Judy: This being Sunday, and a beautiful blossoming day with a warm wind blowing, I sat at my window with the "Hygiene of the Nervous System," Sandy's latest contribution to my mental needs, open in my lap, and my eyes on the prospects without. Thank heaven, thought I, that this institution was so commandingly placed that at least we can look out over the cast-iron wall which shuts us in. I was feeling very cooped up and imprisoned and like an orphan myself, so I decided that my own nervous system required fresh air and exercise and adventure. Straight before me ran that white ribbon of road that dips into the valley and up over the hills on the other side. Ever since I came I have longed to follow it to the top and find out what lies beyond those hills. Poor Judy, I dare say that very same longing enveloped your childhood. If any one of my little chicks ever stands by the window and looks across the valley to the hills and asks, "What's over there?" I shall telephone for a motor car. But today my chicks were all piously engaged with their little souls, I the only wonder at heart. I changed my silken Sunday gown for a homespun, planning meanwhile a means to get to the top of those hills. Then I went to the telephone and brazenly called up 505. "Good afternoon, Mrs. McGurk," said I, very sweet. "May I be speaking with Dr. MacRae?" "Hold the wire," said she, very short. "Afternoon, doctor," said I to him. "Have ye, by chance, any dying patients who live on the top of the hills beyond?" "I have not, thank the Lord." "'Tis a pity," said I, disappointed. "And what are ye after doing with yourself the day?" "I am reading The Origin of Species." "Shut it up. It is not fit for Sunday. And tell me now, is your motor car oiled and ready to go?" "It is at your disposal. Are you wanting me to take some orphans for a ride?" "Just one who's suffering from a nervous system. She's taking a fixed idea that she must get to the top of the hills. My car is a grand climber, in 15 minutes. Wait," said I. "Bring with you a frying pan that's a decent size for two. There's nothing in my kitchen smaller than a cartwheel. And ask Mrs. McGurk, can you stay out for supper?" So I packed in a basket a jar of bacon and some eggs and muffins and ginger cookies, with hot coffee in the thermos bottle, and was waiting on the steps when Sandy chugged up with his automobile and frying pan. We really had a beautiful adventure, and he enjoyed the sensation of running away exactly as much as I. Not once did I let him mention insanity. I made him look at the wide stretches of meadow and the lines of pollard willows backed by billowing hills, and sniff the air, and listen to the cawing crows, and the tinkle of cowbells, and the gurgling of the river. And we talked, by a million things far removed from our asylum. I made him throw away the idea that he's a scientist, and pretend to be a boy. You will scarcely credit the assertion, but he succeeded, more or less. He did pull off one or two really boyish pranks. Sandy is not yet out of his 30s, and, mercy, that is too old to be grown up. We camped on a bluff overlooking our view, gathered some driftwood, built a fire, and cooked the nicest supper, a sprinkling of burnt stick in our fried eggs, but charcoal's healthy. Then, when Sandy had finished his pipe and the sun was setting in its wonted west, we packed up and coasted back home. He says it was the nicest afternoon he has had in years, and, poor deluded man of science, I actually believe it's true. His olive green home is so uncomfortable and dreary and uninspiring that I don't wonder he drowns his troubles in books. Just as soon as I can find a nice comfortable house mother to put in charge, I'm going to plot for the dismissal of Maggie McGurk, though I foresee that she will be even harder than Sterry to pry from her moorings. Please don't draw the conclusion that I'm becoming unduly interested in our bad-tempered doctor, for I'm not. It's just that he leads such a comfortless life that I sometimes long to pat him on the head and tell him to cheer up. The world's full of sunshine, and some of it's for him. Just as I long to comfort my 107 orphans. So much and no more. I'm sure that I had some real news to tell you, but it has completely gone out of my head. The rush of fresh air has made me sleepy. It's 9:30, and I bid you good night. S. P.S. Gordon Hallock has evaporated into thin air. Not a word for 3 weeks. No candy or stuffed animals, or talk mementos of